I like to teach to a short-term, midterm, hybrid model. So we want to make the most profit in our high season and protect our profit in the low season. And a great way to do this is with furnished midterm stays, whether that's insurance stays and making sure that you're getting on the different temporary housing sites. A couple of my favorite are ALE Solutions, Temporary Housing Directory, corporate housing by owner. People need furnished midterm, short-term housing for a crap ton of different reasons. Make sure that you are listed on the platforms that connect you with those people. Those are just a few of my favorites. Today's going to be a little bit different of an episode. I get people asking me questions all of the time on Instagram. And usually when I see questions that pop up more than once, that means a lot more people have them. They just don't feel comfortable asking. So today I decided to round up a lot of those questions that I get online. I'm going to look at my phone. If you were watching this on YouTube, I'm going to refer back. I've screenshotted a lot of them and we're just going to tackle them. Because if somebody has it, you may have it or just not know to ask that question. So we're going to listen and learn from the class today, guys. So starting at the beginning, how do you choose a market? If I get it once a day, I at least get it 5 times a day. How do you choose a market for short-term rentals? With these interest rates, with this, with that, it all boils down to how do you choose a market? And the question, well, the answer to that question is, first, it depends on your budget. You have to know what budget you are working for before we can ever narrow in a market that you are going to be successful. So we want you to have a top tier property in whatever market you choose. So that's not a negative if you have a smaller budget allocation for this deal. It's just facts. Do not take that any kind of way. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a less successful property. We just have to know what we're working. So typically, people are able to get a 10% down second home loan. We work with some great lenders within our community to refer folks to. But cash on hand is typically the limiting factor here. So let's say you have $50,000 to allocate towards this and you are pre-qualified for a property that is $700,000. You don't have 10% down for $700,000. You have 10% down for a down payment in cash for a $500,000 property. With that in mind, what markets are you going to be able to compete with amenities, have the right housing size that is appealing to whatever your guest avatar is, meaning why are people traveling to that area and what size place do they need? What are they looking for in those properties? How long are they staying? Like knowing all of that stuff about your guest avatar is very important. And what markets can your budget go for and have a top tier property? $500,000, we are probably not going to downtown Miami. We are probably not going, the heart of Austin, Texas. Like we're just not going to some of these major markets, but it doesn't mean you cannot be successful in mid or smaller markets that still have amazing demand. So I always like to recommend when you know your budget, start looking within 1 to 3 hours of home in concentric circles. So especially on your first property, let's see if we can find a market that is going to be a diamond in the rough. You absolutely can manage it remotely from a lot of different places. But especially for the first, proximity does have a benefit there, especially even if you're thinking about being able to go and set it up. What are the travel costs involved in that? So 1 to 3 hours from home, if you're not finding any markets that you'll understand, the numbers are profitable in those markets, then you expand your search to 4 to 5 hours. Beyond that, it is a direct flight that is what you look for. So that is the basics of how you determine a market. The next question that I get all of the time is, what strategies do you use to fill up your low season? It's a phenomenal question. And I like to teach to a short-term, midterm, hybrid model. So we want to make the most profit in our high season and protect our profit in the low season. And a great way to do this is with furnished midterm stays, whether that's insurance stays and making sure that you're getting on the different temporary housing sites. A couple of my favorite are ALE Solutions, Temporary Housing Directory, corporate housing by owner. People need furnished midterm, short-term housing for a crap ton of different reasons. Make sure that you are listed on the platforms that connect you with those people. Those are just a few of my favorites. The other thing that I like to do is make sure that your marketing is dialed. So I want to capture all of my guest emails. I do that with a service called StayFi. And essentially how that works is it's a hardware and a software that instead of a guest logging in with a username and password, they're putting in their name and email address. So I'm capturing all of the email addresses for the adults who are staying in that property. So I'm building up that email list. Another way to fill up my low season is guests who have stayed in that high season say, hey, you loved our property in the summer. It has these amazing amenities that you can utilize in the winter. We would love to have you back. We have incentivized rates and offer a discount code for somebody to come in the low season. So that is the difference between just having Airbnb and Vrbo and the online travel agencies bring you those people and owning your book of business. I always want my clients to have a directory and a list of people who have stayed at their property because that is the book of business that they own, and they can always reach back out and retarget those folks. Also, you can retarget them in the high season because you know that they stayed at your property and you know they liked it. And if you can retarget them again, then you're eliminating all of the competition on the platforms there. Next question. Are you washing the bedding and linens on site? And that depends on the size of the property. Our goal is to have a property turned in 2 to 3 hours, sometimes faster if it's a smaller property. And generally, anything under 2 bedrooms, the linens can be washed in that amount of time on site. Anything larger than that, because we have sheets, towels, duvets, all of that, and 2 bedroom is the point where things get a little bit tricky to have turned in that amount of time. Next question. Average cost for cleaners for various size rentals. This is going to vary drastically based on your market. But most of my units are in the Southeast. So this price includes linens. 1 bedroom is $85. 2 bedroom ranges from $95 to $110. 3 bedroom, it's about $135. Sometimes we can get it a little bit less. And a 4 bedroom is $160 to $180. Caveat there, if it is a cabin with a hot tub, 4 bedroom is typically $250 to $300 because the cleaner has to do the hot tub maintenance as well. At least that's how we structure it in our market. This question is about best tips for starting to brand yourself. So when we are talking about short-term rental branding, I personally like to brand to the company as a whole. So my properties do not have individually themed names. They don't have their own Instagram accounts, but our company as a whole, MHM Luxury Properties, has its own website, has its own Instagram, and we share all of our properties through that umbrella brand. So when I think about our brand standard, the properties itself, that is all of the amenities that all of our properties have that is consistent across the board. So if somebody knows that they're staying at one property, they know if they stay at another MHM luxury property, they are going to get the same mattress, the same organic cotton linens, the same coffee setup, the same toiletry products in each one. Always all white bedding, always all white towels. That's our thing as well. But we have curated a list of our brand standard that is the same across the board. So one is the guest experience for the brand itself. And then the other would be the visual branding. If you are just getting started out, I would highly recommend going to Etsy. There are a lot of brand guides out there that will give you a great starting point. You don't have to spend an arm and a leg until you're ready to spend an arm and a leg. There are some amazing visual designers out there that can build you an entire brand. But if you're just getting started and kind of bootstrapping the whole thing, go to Etsy and search brand standard. They're going to give you like a one-page sheet that is going to have typically 3 fonts on it, like your heading fonts, your text fonts, and then your accent fonts, I think it is. And then you're going to have the colors that are your guiding colors for that brand. And so whenever you are creating anything for your company or your brand as a whole, you are using that one pager as a guideline. So any heading, you're using the same font. Any text, you're using the same font for the body text. And then you have your different logos for that. So that is how you can look elevated without necessarily having to spend an arm and a leg to get there. So another question is like, how do you find the money? Like, how do you find the money? And there are a lot of different ways that people can get started in this business. One, there's owning, which is the biggest capital investment. And then there's arbitrage, which means you have a long-term lease that you're able to sublease out as a short-term rental. Does not take as much cash up front, but the cash flow is typically pretty good. But you do have the investment to furnish it if the place doesn't come furnished. And then there's co-hosting, which is managing somebody else's property, which has very little capital up front. Arbitrage and co-hosting are typically great ways to get your foot in the door to start generating some cash flow in the capital in order to reinvest it back into purchasing the property. Owning is always the goal, folks, because we want you to win on cash flow, equity, appreciation, and taxes. So cash flow, of course, is just like it says. What money are you putting in your pocket, your bank account every single month? Equity. If you buy the property, it's going to gain value. Appreciation. No, guys, what the heck am I saying? I just got on my little, rabbit hole here. Equity is somebody else paying off your mortgage. Appreciation is when your property gains in value. I was just going off all on my own there. Sorry about that. Appreciation, when the property gains value. And then, of course, the taxes. There are the short-term rental loopholes with bonus depreciation, get into the weeds of material participation. I'm going to get my tax strategist on here in a few weeks, and we'll get down into the weeds of that. But finding the money, you have to get creative with. Sometimes you have to start with co-hosting or arbitrage and kind of build up a little bit of nest egg. The other thing is look at the equity that you have in your existing. If the money is just sitting there, utilize that equity through a HELOC or another thing to put it to work for you so you can start having that money grow for you. One of the books I love, I think I've talked about it on here before, that got me started in my real estate journey was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And it talks about how one of the biggest myths that people are told is that their primary residence is an asset, when in reality it's a liability, because an asset is something that brings in revenue, where your primary residence, you are not bringing in revenue. So it is viewed as a liability. And start thinking about ways for your asset to pay for your liabilities. So an investment property like a short-term rental is an asset because it is generating income. Start utilizing the equity in your primary home to gain assets that will eventually pay for the liability that is your primary home. So you can leverage a HELOC. You can look at retirement accounts to see what you have there, whole life insurance policies. There are so many ways that you can find the money. Also, if you're really kind of trying to figure out, all right, I have this much for a down payment, but how am I going to furnish this place? 0% interest credit cards or business credit cards that will allow you to have 12 months of 0% interest that you can put the furnishing on that card and then use the revenue from the property to pay that off. So many creative ways to find the money, and where there is a will, there is a way to get started in this. So I never want to hear you guys say, I don't know, I can't find the money, I can't afford it. Shifting the mindset to how can I afford it and how can I make this happen opens the doors to possibilities, as opposed to just viewing it from a mindset of there are no options. It's a very important shift in the mindset. So the other question that we get a lot is, well, where do I start? What programs do you have? What programs do you offer? And the thing is, our mentorships are pretty personalized to the individual, but we have 2 or 3 main ways that you can get started with us. So our flagship program that most people join is called Streamline. And it's a 1-year mentorship that you get one-on-one access to my team through calls. You get a private Slack channel where you can message us back and forth. I'm in that Slack channel. And you also get the group channels, which is where our community lives. We have a general channel. We have a Wins channel, which the Wins channel is always my favorite. And the vibes are just good there. And then we have office hours, which is me once a month. We have all of our coaches. We essentially have an office hours, which is an hour-long call that you can join just about every day of the week, Monday through Friday. And so we have subject matter experts like our tax strategists, interior designers. My personal bookkeeper is in there, people who are in this business doing it where you can get your questions answered. Then we also have, are included in that mentorship, you get one mini retreat, which is an in-person event a year. And that is, if you're a beginner, if you're experienced, like pretty much when in doubt, you qualify for our Streamline mentorship. That is 1 year. Then there's our Elevate mentorship that we only open up a couple of times a year. And the stipulation to join that program is you have to have at least one short-term rental up and running. And where Streamline, we typically come in, see where you are, where you want to be, create a roadmap for it. Elevate is more structured, and it's for hosts that want to get their act together. They understand the potential of this, but it may not be profitable. They probably don't have systems in place. And it's a 6 month intensive to come in and get your systems, processes, automations, operations, marketing in place, in a more structured environment of like, this is what you're doing this week, this is what you're doing next week. Like, it is a more approachable price point. You are in a cohort of people. So typically the group sizes are 10 to 15 people in there. That is your group. That's your hosting community. You're in there in the trenches together, getting it done for 6 months, highly focused with amazing transformation in your business. From that point, you can either go into Streamline, repeat Elevate, or stay in the community in another way. And then we have our subject matter resources. So these are really quick, digestible resources that are available within our mentorship programs, but they're completely self-directed. If you're having a problem on a specific topic, this is just a quick, this is what Madeleine does. This is the resource she provides within her mentorship programs. And it's just a, hey, I got a problem. Give me an answer. I need it now. It's instant download, and it's completely self-directed, so you can go with it at your own pace. So those are kind of the 3 ways to really get in and get in the weeds with us. And then, of course, we have our person events like our Costa Rica retreat or our Athens mini retreat where people just want that connection, want to dive deeper. That's typically where you're going to find interaction and one-on-one support for me specifically in Costa Rica. But those are all of the different ways that you can interact with our team, get additional support. Everything that we do is very personalized because we want to see you win. We understand that when we are in your corner, helping you have confidence in your decisions, that's when you get out of analysis paralysis. But that's also when you are able to move forward with confidence. So, those are our FAQs. I hope that this has been an informative episode. Do not hesitate to reach out to our team if you have any questions about any of our mentorship programs. We are always thrilled to answer that for you. We're going to drop that in the show notes as well. So, hope you guys have a lovely day.